Well, it is my pleasure to welcome to our podcast this week. It is a WBC welterweight champ of the world, Mario Barrios. So Mario, I think it's fair to say you got the biggest name of your career that you're going to be facing coming up. It'll headline the PBC on Prime Video pay-per-view, also on ppv.com. It's July 19th at the MGM Grand Garden Arena. I don't think I need to introduce your opponent, but I'll say his name. It's the great, legendary Manny Pacquiao. You know that. So welcome to the show. I thank you for doing this. And I wanted to, before we get into all the stuff about your fight with Manny, your last fight, your title defense that you made back in November was such a tremendous fight. I just wanted to touch on that for a minute. You took on Abel Ramos. It was a draw, but a hell of a fight. A lot of people looked at that as a fight of the year candidate. You started off really, really well. He came on really strong in the second half. Both of you guys were knocked down in that fight. It was on a massive card on the undercard of Mike Tyson and Jake Paul, and the rematch between Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano. How did you feel about your performance in that fight? And have you gone back and watched it and been as excited as so many people were to watch it?
Yeah, no, that was it was an exciting night. The fight didn't go exactly how I wanted, but that's boxing. Regardless, I prepared for a hard 12 rounds, and that's exactly what I got out of it. But I'm still really proud of everything I was able to show that night. To everything, I guess me and Ramos both, were able to, give the boxing fans and just, fans in general, because that was a fight kind of reached an audience much bigger than boxing. And, but yeah, no, I mean, as a fighter, I wasn't too happy with my performance, but, it's one of those things where sometimes we step in there and, and things are working, and then from one round to the next, or from one punch to the next, things change, and it's just our jobs as fighters, to try to make those adjustments. And I feel like even facing that adversity, getting dropped. I was just doing another interview, and I was talking about it. I was like, man, like those middle rounds, I kind of don't really remember, and
Right.
yeah, and it's like for sure, it's from getting dropped. It's hard to put into words, trying to process, one, getting dropped, because I was hurt, like the way I felt, like the way my leg was stuck, like even getting up, I was out of it, and then trying to still like gather all of your marbles, still trying to make adjustments, to where you can come back to where I can make sure I'm still I'm still good, still conscious of everything going on.
Well, both of you guys have always proclaimed yourselves to be Mexican warriors, and that's what you showed in that fight. And it was just a great fight. I didn't feel like I'd talk to you about the upcoming fight without at least looking back a little bit on that tremendous battle. So you didn't win, but you kept your title because you got the draw, and obviously that was big in terms of helping you get this fight. Because I don't think if you didn't have the WBC welterweight world title, you probably wouldn't be getting a fight with Manny Pacquiao. When you got the fight with Manny, it wasn't a shock to really anybody that he was coming out of retirement once he didn't win the election for the Senate in the Philippines. What was your reaction when you heard for sure I'm going to get a chance to fight Manny Pacquiao?
I was I was obviously I was very excited. Just even I was very excited because originally when I got word of the fight against Pacquiao, it was literally right after the like Ramos fight.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, okay, he's interested, it's coming back out of retirement, 2025. Like, what do you think about it? And like me as a fighter, I'm just like, man, first of all, I'm like, Pacquiao, like hold up. So I was pretty taken away, and then it's kind of just like like a waiting game, and in boxing, most of the time, not anything is really set into stone, right? There's always pieces that are moving around.
Always.
Yeah, so it was like something that was hard to believe, especially with he had his election coming up. But when he lost his election, that's when it became more. I mean, it was just like set in stone. It was like, okay, like this is happening. So then it was like, okay, like I was mentally, I was already prepared or preparing, for a Pacquiao.
Yeah, like had you heard rumors like if he comes out, I'm going to be the guy he wants to fight?
Yeah. So that was
Okay.
like what it was, and then when he lost his election, that's when it was like, okay, like no, like we're gonna finalize everything, and
Yeah.
this is gonna get moving. So I was like, oh, okay, nice. So, well, it was like I've already been, mentally preparing for it. Now, I could like actually, start, camp.
So when I say to you that you were born in, I looked this up before we got on here. You're born in May 1995. Manny Pacquiao turned pro 4 months before you were born. So when I tell you that you weren't even born and he was already boxing as a professional, what do you think when I say that?
It's yeah, no, it's it's crazy to be able to say that, right? The guy I'm fighting has been boxing professionally as long as I've been alive.
Yeah, I mean, took off the last 4 years from the ring, obviously, because he was in retirement. But even still, when I saw
Yeah.
that, I was sort of blown away. Um, were you, I mean, as a young guy growing up, I assume watching boxing at some point before you became a professional, and he's on his way having these major fights. Even when you were a young pro, he was involved in some mega fights. Were you a Manny Pacquiao fan? Were you watching his fights or maybe going to his fights, that type of thing?
I was I was a fan, but I can't say I was the biggest fan. Like I've been telling everybody there have been plenty of Pacquiao's fights where I have rooted for him, and there has been plenty of fights where I've gone against him. Especially as a kid, I grew up a very prideful Mexican kid. So
Well,
uh, yeah, so
they
any
called him they called him the Mexicutioner for a while. He was beating all the Mexicans.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, anytime he fought a Mexican fighter, I was going against him. And but there's also, like I said, man, there's been plenty where I have like rooted for him.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like again, he was just that name from as early as I can remember. When I thought about the sport of boxing, he was a name that was there.
So you're 30 years old. I think you're probably in the prime of your career. You're making your second title defense against Manny. He is, as we've discussed, he's older. He's 46 years old. He's been in retirement for 4 years. He's coming off of a loss, and when he announced he was coming back, the WBC made him number 5 in their welterweight rankings. They approved him to have this title shot against you for your title, and that's been criticized by a lot of people. It's certainly not his fault. It's not your fault. But I just wonder when you hear people say, "Well, Manny was a great fighter, but he certainly shouldn't be rated by the WBC off the layoff at a loss, and he sure as heck shouldn't be getting a chance to fight for the world title." What's your viewpoint about that? Where do you stand on all that?
I think Pacquiao is just one of those, like, I think, like, rare instances where yeah, somebody who has accomplished as much as he has, like they're able to come out of retirement and and still be like ranked as high as they are, and still get those type of fights at that level. um so yeah, I mean, I don't really have um
You understand it though.
yeah, I do.
That's fair. Uh, now, he may not be what he was when he was at his best, when he was, cruising through everybody, as we were talking about, beating all of the Mexican fighters, for example, and winning titles in so many different weight classes through the years, big pay-per-view fights. But even a Manny that's not in his prime, obviously, and it's in the end of his career, what would a victory against such a legendary name mean to you?
A victory against legendary Pacquiao, it means everything right now. I know, in order, I mean, for me to continue pursuing and accomplishing everything I want to in the welterweight division, overall, which is unifying the titles, fighting the other champions. I know right now the welterweight division is kind of moving around a lot, especially
Right?
since Boots has announced he was moving up. Um, yeah, a win against Pacquiao, just continues to put me in all of those places, to continue to move forward and to capture those other titles and just bringing those big exciting fights to the sport of boxing.
The one thing that I find interesting about the matchup, whether he's older or younger or whatever it is, but just the physical dimensions that both of you are. Manny obviously started in the smaller weight class, and he's never been in the biggest guy in the welterweight division, even though he had massive success in the weight class. Now that he's a bit older, though, I look at Mario Barrios. I say you're a younger guy, obviously by a lot, by 16 years, but you're 6 foot tall. He's 5'5". He's much shorter than you. You have a longer reach than he does. Just from a physical standpoint, how do you plan to just make that a big part of your game plan, to use your physical presence compared to his to help you get the victory?
Yeah, definitely. Just using any advantage that I have, especially just naturally, height, reach, my age, my youth. My job, is to as of right now, go into the fight, use all of those advantages, to try to make him feel, 46, to try
Right.
to really just, assert my dominance and yeah, overall just show, why I'm also, aside from all of the, the physical advantages, show why, I'm holding the WBC right now.
I think about a lot of fights where you get to this point where you got a great older champion or top level name superstar. I think Muhammad Ali against Trevor Berbick, an older fighter taking on the younger guy. It feels like you're in a similar kind of position. You're a young guy still trying to make big name, big money. He's had his day. He's older. He's coming out of this long retirement. And a lot of people think, because of that, you might put a beating on him. And a lot of people are going to be sad if, they send, I mean, the old saying, Mario, in boxing, they don't throw you a retirement party. They give you a beating. You know what I mean? Do you feel
Yeah.
like that this fight might shape up like that, where you just go in there and all due respect to the great Manny Pacquiao, but you just treat him like a punching bag?
Yeah, sadly, yeah, that's boxing, right? I know. I mean, I know Pacquiao also, right? He understands very well, the way things work in this sport. Um, but yeah, I've been getting asked that, right? Like if I'm afraid to be the like bad guy, and I'm not. Again, it's a business, right? As right now, everything smiles, everything's it's good between us, and but I know given right, we step into the fight, and if at any point Pacquiao sees, he has me hurt, right, like that killer instinct is there, like that's not going nowhere. So it's like, I mean, it's just business.
So you have no qualms if you can get the old man out of there. You're just going to go out there and try to get him out of there.
Yeah, no. If at any point I see him, like I see I have him hurt, like it's just like, man, like sorry, like again,
Sorry, not sorry.
yeah, I'm sorry. I'm still gonna tip my hat to you, but I'm gonna take care of business.
Uh, you guys have had two common opponents in Dennis Ugas and Keith Thurman. Uh, I wonder if you feel like the way that those fights went, because they both played out differently with both of you guys, is there any bearing whatsoever? Do you take anything from that? Do you look at either of those bouts?
Oh yeah, I try to just as a boxer, go back and look at those, see. It's funny the way like styles work sometimes, right? Because again, like with Ugas, I feel like I outclassed Ugas. I feel like Ugas outclassed Pacquiao. But when I fought Thurman, I feel like Thurman outclassed me, and I feel like Pacquiao outclassed Thurman.
Right.
Um,
So is it a wash?
yeah, so it's kind of it's interesting, but like it's just my job, to go back and look at both of those fights, see what take what I did right in those fights, take what I could have done differently, and then see how like Pacquiao, like how his style, what where he found success and where he made mistakes. So those had been fights that me and my team have looked over in camp, and are very mindful of, especially in these last 2 weeks until the fight.
All right. Well, Mario, I wish you the best of luck in the fight. I know it's a big moment for you defending your title against a legend like Manny Pacquiao. So I wish you the best of luck.
Awesome, Dan. I appreciate that.